We know life can be messy, and that's why you need a plan. Here at the Lifestyle Group, we want to meet you where you are in life and help you create the best home remodeling plan for your lifestyle. To us, plan is more than just a word. It's an acronym we live by for our clients. To always be prepared, to lead you through the process, to adapt to what you need, and to make sure there are no surprises. Each month on the Do You Plan podcast, we'll look into home remodeling projects that have inspired us, taught us, or can teach you for your future home remodel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Do You Plan podcast. I'm your host, Geoff, and today I'm flying solo as I hit on a topic that I wanted to talk about a little bit for potential remodeling clients. Before I do, I have a funny story. I have a current set of clients that we did a project for a handful of years ago. Their names are Marty and Michelle Zoyce, and they're great people that we did a bathroom for. And now they've come back around and we're doing, I call it the kitchen with scope creep. So we're doing a kitchen and we're doing some other things on the main level, carrying flooring and maybe a fireplace and some other fun things. And so they've been going through the selection process with us and finalizing the details. And in the midst of that, Michelle was nice enough to let me know that every time she gets in the car, Marty is actually listening to my voice on these podcasts. He's going through podcast by podcast, gathering information and preparing for their project. So this is my quick shout out to Marty to say thanks for being the one person who's been the glutton of punishment to listen to all of these. And thanks for taking the time and kind of paying attention to some of the things that I try to put out there to help yourself and prospective clients. So hope you enjoy that, Michelle, getting that shout out to Marty. Okay, with that, I wanted to have a topic that kind of filled what I'm going to call a middle ground in the process that most people don't think about on the front end, but that they maybe wish they thought about more on the back end. And that is related to the idea of allowances and selections and actually getting product into a project. And so when I think about what clients think about on the front end, I feel like they're focused on trying to find the right partner for them. And they tie in things like price and schedule availability, but they don't think enough about the thing that comes next. I have had a conversation with my daughters over the last several years as they've gotten older. I always say your decision, your consequences, but don't think what the next step of whatever you're about to decide is going to get you. Think 2 steps ahead as to what the outcome of that decision is going to be. I was trying to keep them out of trouble, and for the most part, I think we were pretty successful. But it's always that second thing, that second shoe to drop that people don't think about. So, for instance, I could pick a remodeling partner that could get me in the schedule quickly, but there might be a reason they could get me in their schedule very quickly. Or I could pick a remodeling partner that has an attractive price for the project that I want to do, but their allowances were very low. And so I'm really not getting the product that I was expecting or wanting unless I spend more. And now I'm back up to the price point of other people that I talked to who just told me that number in the first place. So there's this whole discussion around selections and products and how do you navigate it. And I think what I want to do is I want to build a picture for people to start with that essentially says there's a wide gamut of what you can expect from a remodeling contractor in terms of the models of business that people follow. So on the low end, I think you have a scenario where it's a guy that has a small company, maybe he works out of his truck, has a helper or two potentially. He tells you, hey, you go buy the product and I'll put it in. And there's a place for that. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to find the right guy to do that thing. And generally, if he's booked out a long time, you can find a small company like that that's a good fit, particularly on a project that maybe isn't expansive, and it can be okay. I would never tell somebody that don't ever do that because there are a number of good people out there that have a business like that. In many cases, maybe they don't have the bandwidth to carry the cost of all the product and lining up customers. Maybe they don't want the headaches. But there are some potential pitfalls to it in terms of the level of product that you're going to get or the process that you're going to go through, and making sure then you have to answer or ask the question of if you're providing the product and he damages it, who's paying for it? So that's at one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the designer that has an incredible reputation. I'll give you an example. We work with and do projects with a fantastic designer. Company is called Tiffany Skilling Interiors. Tiffany and her team are really, really good. Their vision is amazing. When clients hire Tiffany and her team, what they're essentially saying is, we want you to pick everything for us, and we want you to pull it all together because we've seen the work that you do, and that's what we want. We want that vision and that feel, and we don't want to be part of that selection process. So that's a totally different model. And in that case, what we actually do for Tiffany and her team is we come in and work with her group and work particularly for the client, and we just execute the project. We don't make decisions in terms of design and selections. We'll give input where it makes sense in the field, but only just to keep everybody out of trouble. If there was a circumstance or a situation that we see, we're not designing that. We tend to live at the Lifestyle Group when clients come directly to us in our sandbox is in the middle. And what I mean by that is that I have designers on staff. They're very talented. They're very nice. They're very helpful. We have a showroom where you can come in and make selections. Harvard did a study in the late 1990s where they have a joint center for housing studies, and they started to study how people wanted to buy remodeling. And one of the things that they found was that people loved the idea of a one-stop shop, but they didn't like the level of product options and quality that they were getting at the box stores. So the box stores did a great job of being able to give you a visual of everything in one place, but they don't really give you from a low-end product to a high-end quality product. They give you that low to mid-grade product, generally speaking, from a price point perspective. And so we took that information many, many years ago. We bought a small company in Crawfordsville that allowed us to buy cabinetry direct from a manufacturer that does a great job. We still use them all these years later. We buy carpet direct from Shaw. We have direct relationships wherever we can to manufacturers to eliminate the middleman. And we have a showroom that essentially can show you product from entry level, just cost effective, nice, functional, but basic, to fancy. Maybe not crazy town, but upper middle level plus for sure. And so we're able to give people choices and options. But in that process of having the showroom, it leads to another thing, which is that you as a client have to think about, which is when you select your product, and I'll talk more about the product selection itself in a moment, when the product comes in, where is it going to be housed? So if you think about the world today where we still have very long lead times on some items and other items come quick, and you have a project that's going to start a handful of months out from now and something comes in, where is it being stored? In our particular case, we have a warehouse where everything comes in, we stage it, and once everything is there for your project, we can bring everything out when it's needed. So we're not trying to fill your garage or your living room with a bunch of materials that we're not going to need for months. We're going to stage that at our location. But I do think that most people don't even give that the first consideration when you're trying to think about how you're going to manage between the time that you sign the contract and the remodel actually starting, and then actually during that project, where is all the stuff going to be kept? So I think we check a box there that's worth contemplating early on. But when we talk about product selection and allowances and how do you get to a project price, I come up with this topic because as I have conversations with folks, like I had a conversation with a person yesterday and they said they've got many estimates. And I'm like, okay, what are you hearing from people? I gave the first number because I didn't want them to tell me what their budget was. I didn't want them to tell me what they thought it was going to cost or what they hoped it would cost. I gave them the price that I think it will be, or a price range that I thought it would be. So in this particular example, yesterday, I had a really nice conversation with a gentleman. Again, it was kind of a kitchen with scope creep, take out a wall, want to expand the cabinetry. And I gave him a couple of examples to say, we just are doing one for a client where it's a little bit more limited scale in a project like yours, and it was in the 90s. And we're doing another one where there's more cabinetry and more flooring, and it's more expansive, and it's in the 125 to 130 range. And from what you're describing to me, it could be somewhere in between. And so he's telling me about the many estimates that he's received. And my question to him was, well, what are they pricing? Like, what specifically are they putting in there? What we tend to do is try to use specific products that fall in a middle range as a starting point, unless I know from a client that they want something fancy or they want something basic. In the absence of knowing exactly what they want, I'm going to try to get them to the middle. So if somebody tells me that they want granite or quartz countertops, I'm not going to the most expensive granite or quartz out there. I'm not going to the basic granite or quartz out there. I'm going to a mid-level where I'm kind of in a sweet spot where I'll be able to find options for them to save, or I'll be able to find options for them to go up if they fall in love with something, or they'll have options to go up. Same thing with flooring. Same thing with our approach with cabinetry and things of that nature. We're trying to get to a place in the middle. Faucets, if I'm having a conversation and we haven't made selections yet, I'm going to tell people that we're going to price a mid-range Delta faucet. We're going to price Delta shower valves. And it doesn't mean that we do all Delta all the time. It means it gives me something tangible so that when we price a project and a client comes in and we're presenting a design and we're presenting that price, we can actually show people, I price this to start. I price this type of floor and you have these options. I price this type of countertop, but you could do this or this, and this is how the price moves. And we start to build a picture for people. So the analogy that I use all the time is it's kind of like we start at the top of the funnel and we work our way more and more specifically. We work our way down to the details that become a project, that become defined. But in the absence of information, I'm trying to get in the middle at the beginning. And then as we define things, clients will make selections, and that may move us a little lower in price or a little higher in price. But most of the time, they're not drastic moves because we have the scope of the project. So as you're thinking about selections for your project, and really as you're thinking about your project in general, what I would have you do is kind of back up and start thinking about those things very early. It's intuitive for you to think, if you're doing a kitchen remodel and you're going to get new appliances, well, what kind of appliances am I going to get? And what do I want to spend on them? And you start looking, and inevitably, if you're like most people, you'll spend a little bit more than you anticipated because you'll go and you'll look at them and you'll see the features, or you'll see a product line that you like, and it may take you a little bit higher than you planned. On the remodel pricing side for the project itself, I will tell you, I try to live at the place where I see most people gravitating to based on the conversations that I have. So if we're going to do a backsplash tile in a project in a kitchen, for instance, I'm not going to price the least expensive tile that I could possibly find and say, well, I got your backsplash tile on the project. I'm also not going to price $100 a square foot hand sculpted tile either. I'm going to go to that sweet spot where I see people gravitating to. And it might be like a unique subway tile that has some either texture or shape to it that's a little bit more expensive. Or it might be where we could do a very basic tile, but do a little bit of a splash of a border or a detail something that gets us in the realm where people know that we've thought about it and I didn't lowball it or cheat it to a place where you have no options except to go up. So what that enables us to do, I think, in the long run is be pretty accurate on the front end with pricing not moving from what we're presenting initially. I bring that up because I think there have been multiple times over the years, and an instance relatively recently, where somebody used us for a project now, but they didn't use us the first time, and they said they should have. But I think they took, I know they took the lower price thinking it was going to be less expensive, but by the time they got everything they wanted, it wasn't less expensive. And so they regretted that decision. And I would just have you think early on about what types of products that you want. And really, I would even go a bit further and broaden it and say, what kind of experience do you want? And think about that middle ground of how are they getting the product to my house? Who's going to be in my house doing the work? What kind of products are they selling me? And how do they feel about them, or what's their experience been with them? Because the other point that I will make in this particular conversation is I'm not going to sell products that we've had problems with. If we've had problems with a particular product, we're done with it. If somebody stands behind it and it's just an isolated incident, I'm not worried about that. But like the early iterations of the luxury vinyl plank flooring were not very good. They scratched. And we haven't had that experience with the newer versions, but it took a while for us to introduce that product. We were probably behind other people because we wanted to make sure that it had finishes on the top of that flooring that were protective of it. So just everyday use was reasonable, that you weren't going to scratch your floor every time you pulled a chair out. That's not reasonable to me. Same thing with just fiberglass shower units and some different things. We're very particular about what we want to use because we want it to last and we want it to perform. And that just brings me to the kind of concluding point on this, which is from a relationship perspective, what we're trying to do with people is the example that I give is I appreciate your first project, but what I really want are all the rest. And I could sit here and do a podcast for 6 hours about all the great things that we do or how perfect we are. All of that stuff is lip service. It doesn't mean anything until you've experienced a project with us where you've had our guys in your house. You get to know them. You want to adopt them as your newfound children that can fix everything around your house because they are nice. They do care. And I say that because we've had 2 different clients in the last week say that they want to adopt our guys because they end up being there so long and they get to know them to become part of the family, which is great. So when somebody goes to do the next project after they recover from the first project for a couple of years and that comes back around, what we want to create is an experience the first time where there's zero hesitation that we're going to do your project the second time and that you want the same guys back and that you want the same type of experience. You want a consistent experience and with people who care. With that, I will tell you, if you ever have any questions about selection process in general, what makes sense, if something doesn't feel right, even if you don't do a project with us and you just want to ask a question, feel free to reach out to us at info@lifestylegroup.com and we'll give you at least our thoughts and our experience on what we know about a particular approach. And I do want to make a quick caveat point that if I don't ever mind, like if somebody once falls in love with a furniture vanity for a bathroom and they'd say, hey, do you care if we get our own vanity and have it there? Absolutely. I do not care at all. Like our process does not mean you have to buy every last thing from us through our building in any way. It doesn't happen like that. And there are times we go outside of our building to help people find the specific thing that they want. And that's really important to acknowledge. What we're trying to prevent is the burden on busy families and busy individuals to have to go to the paint store, to the cabinet store, to the plumbing store, to the flooring store, and have to beg and borrow and steal all of these samples to come back and try to get them in one place and try to make selections, and then things are out of stock or things are discontinued and now they got to go borrow them again. We're trying to just make the process easier. And I think with that, even if we're not the partner for you, if we can make your process easier by answering some questions, as I said, feel free to reach out. And we thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, let us know, and have a wonderful day.
Do you have a home remodeling question? Or would you like to know what the best remodeling plan would be to fit your lifestyle? Submit your questions now at lifestylegroup.com, and we may answer them on a future episode. Stay tuned to see what advice the Lifestyle Group has for you on the next episode of the Do You Plan podcast.